There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hey guys, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. I have never done a book haul revisit. I have to say that I thought they were so nerdy. They were even too nerdy for me. Doris of Aldi Books started doing them a couple of years ago, and then maybe about a year ago, maybe something like that, Greg of Supposedly Fun started doing them, and I have to admit I never watched them. The idea of making a video about another video that you've made just sounded too meta for me. But then, a few months ago, I actually watched one of Greg's, and like everything else on his channel, it was fantastic. And then I watched some of Doris's, and they were fantastic. And I talked to Britta about it, and she said, if you like the booktuber, it's fun to watch them geek out about the books that they bought a year ago or 2 years ago, and kind of do a little bit of an accounting to themselves in public about how many of them they've read, and what they should they keep or toss them, or any of those kind of questions that you would ask by looking at the books that have been sitting on your shelf that you brought in a fair bit of time ago. So I'm going to do one. I don't know if I'm going to do them regularly. I know Greg, and maybe Doris too, does on the 1 year anniversary and 2 year, 3 years, so it combines from June of last year, the year before, and so on in one video. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start out. My first book haul was a 3-part video back in the days when I made short videos. It's about 30 books or something, but I split it up into 3 shorter videos. The first one was published, the second video on my channel, on September 10th, 2017. So it's not like a special anniversary. I'm going to do all 3. I called it my August book haul. They were books that I bought in August 2017. This video is going to be me revisiting them all. And I thought we'd start with watching the first 30 seconds or maybe 17 seconds because I'm going to get so ashamed. But this is, you think I'm wooden now in my presentation on BookTube? Well, this is how I started. Hey, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my new channel. Today I'm going to do book haul, and I love watching book haul videos on BookTube. I know that they're a bit controversial. I think they should be short. I've already done one take of this. It was 24 minutes long. I have to get it down to half that. So here I go again. Number 1, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. Alright, so I have a list of them as I talked about them on those videos. I could organize the list. I'm not going to. I'm just going to go through the list. So the first one that I hauled way back when was The Ministry of Utmost Happiness by Aaron Daddy Roy, and I think I maybe had already finished reading it, or I was reading it when I made the video, because my first ever book review on my channel, unfortunately, was this book. I say unfortunately because it's a very difficult book to review, and I was a newbie, and it's just humiliating to watch me kind of try to say something intelligent about it, but I do get positive comments on it. Just got one like 30 minutes ago. Like, I don't get them that often, but they keep trickling in. So I think I could do a much better job of reviewing this novel now. I have kind of gone back and forth thinking it wasn't as good as I thought it was, and then other times where I think, no, it was actually better than So it's a book that would probably benefit from rereading. It is the first anything that I read by Aaron Daddy Roy, and much later, just a year or 2 ago, I finally read The God of Small Things, and I hated it. But I really loved this. It wasn't maybe a perfect novel, but it has stuck with me, and most of it I absolutely adored. I would love to reread it, and I think I have kind of a little bit of a date with Kim of Middle of the Book March to reread this, possibly. Kim, don't we? The next one is by the South African/British novelist. I think she's living more in South Africa than in the UK. Her second novel, Johannesburg, by Fiona Melrose. This was based on the strength of her debut novel, which I absolutely loved, Midwinter, which came out in 2016. Johannesburg was published the next year, and it was a kind of a Mrs. Dalloway in South Africa thing. And it just didn't work. I bailed quite early, page 40. I had loved Midwinter, and this one, it just, the story didn't grabbed me, and the writing just didn't flow the way it had in her debut. So I gifted it to Kendra Winchester because she has such a Virginia Woolf fetish. Kendra, did you ever read it? How It All Began. This one I kind of forgot I had. So, Penelope Lively, How It All Began. The protagonist is mugged and breaks her hip. I've never read any Penelope Lively. Everybody says if you read one Penelope Lively, it must be Moon something. Moon Tiger. So just a few months ago, I finally got Moon Tiger. To be honest, I'm probably more likely to start with Moon Tiger than this one, but if I love Moon Tiger, I will get to this one. So I am going to commit to... I'm going to put this in a pile of... and then I'm going to make some promises. So this one goes in the pile of what I'm going to do about this one. Next is Waiting for the Rain by Charles Mungoshi, a Zimbabwean novel. It was published before Zimbabwe existed, so a Rhodesian/Zimbabwean novel. And I finally read this late last year and loved it. It was a 5-star read. I'm so glad that I finally got to it. I want to read more by Mungoshi, who just died a few years ago. I will link to my review. So this one was a big success. I was hoping to get to this one this year for the Asian Readathon, and the Asian Readathon kind of got crowded out by another Readathon this year, but I will get to this one soon. I've been so curious about it ever since I bought it back in September 2017. Selected Myanmar Short Stories, translated by Ma Tanegi. It's just what it says. And I bought it here in Tokyo. It's not a book that's readily available anywhere now. A whole bunch of authors, and each story has a fabulous glossy illustration to go with it. I have to get to this one. So next, George Beneath a Paper Moon by Nina Bodden. I think Nina Bodden is usually a children's writer, and this was a novel for adults, and I did try it a couple years ago, and it was awful. I bailed early. It's gone out of the house. That Long Silence by Shashi Deshpande. I did finally read this a couple of years ago. I didn't really care for it. I think it was a 3-star read. It had potential, but it just didn't come alive enough. I didn't think that the characters or the writing carried me through to connect deep enough that it's very forgettable. This one I could probably on-haul. I'm going to put this in the on-haul pile. Rose Tremaine, Evangelist Fan. These are short stories. The only thing I've ever read by Rose Tremaine I absolutely loved, and that was her novel from about 2016, The Gustav Sonata. I loved it, and I have been collecting. Anytime I see another Rose Tremaine in the bookstore, in the used bookstore or whatever, I snatch it up, but I have never gotten around to reading anything else. To be honest, this is probably not what I would start with, but I am going to hold this. So I'm not going to do a reckoning. I'm going to read probably another Rose Tremaine novel and then maybe get to the short story collection. Next is Carol Shields' last novel, Unless. This is the second copy of this novel that I had. I think I still have one in a box in Canada that was signed by Carol Shields. It was published when she was very ill, and she died shortly after it was published. I have an autographed copies in Canada. I found a used copy here in Tokyo, and I tried to read it, and I couldn't get past chapter 1. I loved Carol Shields when I was in my 20s and 30s, and now when I read her stuff, I just can't connect with it at all. It just doesn't work. I did reread my favorite collection of her short stories, a buddy read with Britta last year. The short story collection is called Various Miracles, and there were 2 or 3 of them that I still loved, but most of them I really, really disliked. And I had that very strong reaction against Unless. She's just not a writer that speaks to me at this time in my life. She is a writer that was one of my very most favorites and did speak to me deeply, but no more. So I have unhauled that one. Next, Fear and Trembling by Amélie Nothomb. It was probably translated, wasn't it? I don't think I was listing translators back when I first started on BookTube, but yes, translated by Adriana Hunter. I hated this book so much, I gave it 1 star. It started out fun. It's about a maybe French woman like Nothomb working in Japan and encountering all the crazy stuff that workaholic Japanese office culture. but by the end I absolutely hated it. There was a cultural superiority and disdainfulness where she actually moved from kind of being satirical to being diagnostic and prescriptive about what needed to change in Japanese culture, and by the end I just loathed it. I will never read another word that writer puts out. Next is The Good Women of China by Xin Ran, a Chinese writer, and this was about her starting up a radio phone-in talk show in China in the 80s or something, for women, for Chinese women. The premise was fascinating. I hated the writing. I couldn't read it. I bailed early. And I passed it on to Doris of Aldi Books, and I think she read it. I think she's already read it. Translated from the Chinese by Esther Tildesley. But I just didn't like the writing. Oh, this is one of the success stories of this book haul. The One Who Did Not Ask by Altaf Fatima. Translated from the Urdu by Ruxana Ahmed. I picked this up at a used bookstore. I'd never heard of. My eyes always gravitate towards the authors or titles, anything that I've never heard of. Bought it about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more. I read it. I fell so deep into this novel. It's one of my favorite novels of all time. It took me about 3 luxuriant months where I would read another chapter and put it down for a week and then read another chapter. It was just so rich. Altaf Fatima was one of the preeminent Urdu novelists, and she was about 94 or something. She was still alive, and then when I was doing my review of the novel, she died that week. So I actually put in a little thing. So that was part of my review, that she had just died, and then I got comments from her granddaughter and some other family members or friends on my review video. Just very touching. But this novel was beautiful and touching. A great translation. Needed some more footnotes and some more glossaries about the vocabulary, but oh my god, I just love it. I can't wait to reread this one. This is a book that I want to reread at least 2 more times in my life. Visits by Peter Robbins. It's his gay memoir with a fabulously homoerotic cover. The painting is by Jan Ferdinand Williamson, and he was a British writer, and this is his memoir. It started out really great, and there were some very memorable moments, and I liked the writing. By the end, it didn't kind of come together, and I didn't end up enjoying it that much. But I enjoyed the first, maybe third or something, about his childhood, and then it got really bogged down in family dynamics of the extended family, and they weren't narrated in a way that held my interest. I'm going to hold on to it, I think, but just maybe I'll frame the cover. The Bonesetters Daughter by Amy Tan. I haven't read it. Again, this was kind of on my mental list for the Asian Readathon. Didn't do a lot of reading for the Readathon this year. It's a chunky novel. I want to get to it. So this is going to go on my reckoning pile. Next, The Towers of Trebzon by Rose Macaulay. I started reading it. I can't even remember now. Is it fiction or non-fiction? I believe it's fiction. About an upper-class British woman traveling in Turkey. At least the beginning of the voyage starts in Turkey. And I loved the writing. I was really engrossed in it. And within the first couple chapters, the racism of this female protagonist, I couldn't stand it. The way she would interact with the Turkish men or the Turkish people. So I bailed. Just gone out of the house. Sleeping Waters by John Trevena. I'm actually finally reading it now. I am 120 pages into this 1915 novel, recently reprinted by Valancourt Books, and I am totally engrossed. It's a chunky one. I am reading a whole pile of books right now at the same time, so I don't know when I'll finish, but I finally gotten to it. I got to it for the 1900 to 1950 readathon, and it has been worth the wait. This is a memoir by a South African writer, Down Second Avenue by Ezekiel Mfuleli. I was aware of his novels. I've never read anything. I might have read a short story or something in years past, but I'm really interested in South African literature, especially by the black writers. So he has been on my radar, and I found this in a used bookstore. Still haven't gotten to it. It's very short. It's his autobiography. Originally published in 1959. Barren Lives, a Brazilian novel by Graciliano Ramos, translated from the Portuguese by Ralph Edward Dimmick. I did read this. I really liked it. It is a naturalistic novel that is got some social protests. It's about a peasant family, and my God, they almost starved to death, and it was a very tough story during a drought, and how they survived or didn't survive. It was tough going and very well done. So on the strength of this novel, I have recently acquired a novel that is newly available in English, part of NYRB Books, Sal Bernardo by Graciliano Ramos, and this one is translated by Padma Viswanathan, and I'm looking forward to getting to this. Portnoy's Complaint by Philip Roth. I was going to do this for Memento Mori-a-thon last year. I didn't get to it. This will go on my reckoning pile. I love Adam. I think Philip Roth was a dick, but then so is... Oh, never mind. But I don't know. It's going on my reckoning pile. The Double Hook, Sheila Watson, a Canadian novella. I did read it many years ago. I think I might have studied it at university. It was originally published in 1959, and when I tried to read it, I didn't get very far and I bailed. Maybe it wasn't the right time. I'm going to try it again. It's a small little book. I'm not going to put it on my reckoning pile. It's there. I will get to it when I get to it. Another Asian American novel, Aloft by Chang-rae Lee, Korean American writer. It's been sitting on my shelf for this long, and every Asian readathon I think, will I try to get to this, and I haven't got to it. The ruminative narrator, spiritual relative of John Updike's Rabbit Angstrom. Jerry's world is somewhere between Cheever Country and Gatsby's Vanished Green Eden. No, I'm not sure how interesting that sounds to me. This one is going to go on the reckoning pile. Another great success story from that particular book haul was a gift from Lindy, The Lost Garden by Helen Humphreys. I read this. It's become one of my favorite novels of all time. It's a little bit about Virginia Woolf. It's about an independent single woman in wartime Britain, and just a beautiful work of literature. I haven't read anything else by Helen Humphreys that I loved nearly as well as this. In fact, aside from one work of nonfiction, I haven't enjoyed anything else I've read by her, but this novel has a very special place in my heart, and it all started with my September 2017 book haul. Next, and this is part 3, this is the third video that I made in September that year, Tessa Hadley's The Past. I think I did a page 112 test some months or years later. Hated it. Got rid of it. Next is a Canadian novel that I think I bought. I can't remember what I found out about it, but it was out of print and I paid a fairly hefty sum to get it sent to me here in Japan. Sandbars by Una McPhee. And I have shown this. I think I've done a page 112 test. And I kind of liked the page 112, but I didn't really love it. My old prof and good friend, Kathy, expressed an interest in buddy reading, and I never followed up enough to do that buddy read, but, there's no time like the present. This one's going on my reckoning pile. It was originally published in 1977, and it is set in the Ottawa Valley, which is where my former professor and good friend Kathy grew up. I think she actually waited on me and then finally read it herself. She found a library copy, but I never did check with her. So anyway, yeah, this is going on the reckoning pile. Housekeeping by Marilyn Robinson. This is probably the one before she got too churchy for me. I read one of her, she's written a series of church novels, not a fan. This one I think is her debut. I'd rather read about housekeeping than church. I'm going to get to it. It's short. I'm not putting it on the reckoning pile. I'm going to keep it. Greg has a great category. He calls it library building. This is a library building. This one is a keeper. The Sentimentalists by Johanna Skibsrud. Obviously a war novel, Canadian novel. It won the 2010 Giller Prize. It's a Vietnam War novel. It's about coming back from North Dakota man moves to Canada after getting home from the Vietnam War. I I don't know. This is going on the reckoning pile. Monocerous, a novel by a black Canadian writer from Alberta, Suzette Mayer. I'm not sure if she is queer, but this is a queer-themed novel. This was a gift from Lindy. I'm not going to reckon with this one. I will get to it when it feels really right. I'm always nervous about trying books that friends give me, because what if I don't like them? And certainly Lindy has given me, I can think of 2 books that she has given me that have gone on my best 20 books of all time list. But I will get to this one at some point, whenever the spirit moves me. Lindy was a guest on the bookish podcast Reading Envy, and she talked about this book. I put a link to that interview in the original book haul video. I will also put it in here. Lindy also sent me Cool for You by Eileen Miles, and I did try it and I didn't get on with it, so I bailed. It's gone out of the house. Thanks anyway, Lindy. Madeleine Tien's, I believe it's her only short story collection, Simple Recipes. I read it. I think I gave it 5 stars, but I was still in the afterglow from having read Do Not Say We Have Nothing, which is the best novel I've ever read. These stories were not the best short stories I've ever read. They were probably more like a 3.5, 4-star read. I enjoyed some of them. They haven't stuck with me. Not like Do Not Say We Have Nothing, but I enjoyed them. Geek Loved by Catherine Dunn. Oh my god, I read the first chapter of this early in my booktube career. Early in my booktube days. Loved the first chapter, read the second chapter, hated it, bailed. That one was just too weird for me. That book has gone out of the house. The next one is Augustus by John Williams. I didn't find it on my shelf. I'm not going to take the time to find it now. I still have it. It is a historical novel set in ancient Roman times, obviously, Augustus. He is the author of one of the best novels ever written, Stoner. Augustus is obviously a very different one. I will leave it as kind of a library builder type book. I will get to it. Waterland by Graham Swift. I have read 2 novels by him, both of which were excellent. The first one I read was Mothering Sunday, and I've reread it. And then I read Last Orders, which was also excellent. And on the strength of that, I picked up Waterland. I haven't read it. I think this is a book that I want to get to this year, so this will go on the reckoning pile. Next is this chunker, Family Furnishings, Selected Stories from 1995 to 2014 by Alice Munro. What a gorgeous cover. I have been reading a Alice Munro collection of short stories a year, maybe 3 years in a row with Kendra Winchester. We might get to this one this year, but I haven't read this one. I'm assuming I've read quite a few of them in other collections, but this one is pride of place on my shelf while I ever get around to reading it. The White Tiger by Aravind Adiga. Haven't read it yet. I remember I bought this at a recycle shop, or what do they call them, a thrift store in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan on a visit home on one Christmas. I paid about $1 for it. It's a nice copy it's got a really thick dust jacket. Everybody tells me that I must get to it. I don't need to put this on a reckoning pile. It's probably one of the very next Indian novels I will read. I love Indian literature. I just haven't gotten around to it. Shawn Michaels, Us Conductors. This won the Giller Prize, don't know which year, but it was published in Canada in 2014. And it is a historical novel about the famous Russian scientist, inventor, and spy, Lev Terman. He was the creator of that electronic musical instrument, the theremin. I don't know. This one's going to go on the reckoning pile. And the last one on the list is Outline by Rachel Cusk, which I hauled in September 2017, and I finally read about 12 pages of it, and that was more than enough. It's gone out of the house. So, let me look at the reckoning pile. How many? Okay, so I have 8 books on my reckoning pile. I'm going to do a combination page 112 and try a chapter tag to explore these novels further and then decide whether I want to read them or whether I want to get rid of them. So here is the first 4. And here is the second 4. I'm not committing to doing them necessarily in these 2 groups, but I will do them in 2 videos of 4 books each, and that will be my next step. This was fun. If you tell me you weren't interested in it, I won't ever do another one. But, yeah, I can see the benefit of it. Whew. Thanks for watching.